It's early in the morning and I'm taking a walk in my garden. There was something I wanted to share that I started to observe a lot in my garden. I'm going to step back. Hopefully you can see this. Do you see this beautiful zucchini plant growing? Well, this is really interesting. I put a couple seeds in one of those florist pots that I use and put just some very small holes because I was planning on moving it somewhere. It was not planted here in this tub that I've got set up. This is a compost bin that I started to set up. So I sat the pot. The plant was looking terrible because I didn't get around to moving it, and it was small, the leaves, or even yellowing. I sat the pot on top of my compost bin here. You know, like I compost in place, no turning, no nothing. Just sat it there. You can see it. It's just sitting on top. Oh, this is mint that was also sitting on the ground somewhere. It looks so bad. I just pulled the whole thing up, came up like a carpet, and I dropped it in. It's chocolate mint. But can you see the pot? Okay, what is really getting to me, and this is what's interesting, is I didn't prep it to grow into this container here. I simply sat it on top a few weeks ago. And I was going to try to figure out where to plant the zucchini plant. It was almost like it was overnight. This is the part I was confused about. It was just like it was overnight. The plant just lifted and started turning green. It went from looking so bad, the seedlings, and just took off. Yes, it could have sent feeder roots up that quick, down into the compost. But I don't see how, because it started immediately to look good. This is my theory, and it's only a theory, because I'm starting to see this happen in other places too. That's why I'm sharing it with you. You can give me ideas. I think and this is why I layer. Remember, I layer. I think by sitting the pot on top of the compost bin, it was again, I compost in place, I throw my kitchen scraps in there, leaves from the garden, anything I've got, I just throw in there, and when I'm ready, I plant in it unless things come up on their own, which happens a lot. But I think what happened is when I sat my pot in there with the tiny little holes, because like I said, the holes aren't even on the bottom. This was strictly to sit here until I figured out where to move it. It's easy to water. It waters my compost bin. That's why I like putting pots on top. I think the microbes, the earthworms and everything, moved into the pot immediately. The microbes, yes, they could go into the very small holes, and somehow that plant benefited by simply sitting on top of the compost bin without having big holes on the bottom, and immediately took off. It was as if I fed the plant. That's the way this plant looked, as if I gave it plant food or something. It just started taking off and immediately went into growing flowers, and there should be fruit starting. Right now, it looks like these are all males. Oh no, oh my gosh! I didn't even know that was there. Look at the zucchini, and more zucchini coming up. See, this is the part that's confusing me, is normally when I'm planting on top of a compost bin, I take the plastic tubs. Let me grab one. Sorry if I'm moving you around. And here's the tubs. Oops, stuff is falling. And I cut big holes on the bottom. These don't have holes, see? Let me move that before I step on it, break my neck. I had this pot up against the front of the house where I had only some small holes coming out of the side. Literally, with like my knitting needle, I made some holes so I could direct the water where I wanted it while the seedlings were growing. I moved the whole pot here, just sat it on top of the compost bin because I still didn't know what I was going to grow in this one. And it just took off. Like literally overnight, the plant just started growing. So I think not only do I have to look for the microbes, I think the microbes look for the pots, and for whatever reason, there wasn't much in there. All my pots, when I'm planting in them, I grab some leaves from the garden and I put them on the bottom, even if I put the holes on the side, because I know that the leaves will break down underneath the plant as it's growing. Let's swing around this way. But I just wanted to share that with you. I didn't prep this. This is no prepping, no nothing. And that's a mint plant. That's the strawberry mint. I just sat that in there too, which is really good for bringing bees. But for tea, it tastes terrible. We won't go there. And you can't really see the pot. There it is. Like I said, normally I prep them. I make sure there's good holes on the bottom if it's going to sit. Let me move this. See, this container doesn't have holes on the bottom. It's cut it on the side. But I didn't prep it. In no way did I prep and get ready to plant this zucchini in here. I just simply took the pot from the front of the house because the little seedlings looked like they were doing really bad, sat the pot on top, continued to throw my stuff in there, and this plant just took off. Again, no holes on the bottom, just a few on the side. So I'm convinced that when something wants to grow, it's going to grow, number one. And number two, I really think that microbes are moving around and earthworms totally on their own. And they must have got into that pot overnight. They started to give this plant what it needed, even though it wasn't prepped to go in there in any way. And it took off, and you and I together, and this is no joke. Honestly, I did not know there was a zucchini on there already. I kept looking, but it's tucked under the bottom leaf. But there it is. So again, and I'm going to bring this up again, if you're doing the method that I do, which is composting in place where there's no turning or anything, and you're just filling up a tub and you're slowly deciding on what you're going to plant in there, you're dumping in kitchen scraps and stuff, put pots on top. Hopefully they won't set root if you don't want them there, but just sit some flower pots on top, have something in there. I mean, it's good if you have something in there. It could be flower seeds you could throw in there in your pot. You could have regular plants in there, because when you water your plants, it keeps the compost bin alive, because it automatically will water the compost bin, and the earthworms can go back and forth under the pot. And that's the way I do most of my pots. But I'm baffled by this. This has really baffled me, because there are no holes on the bottom of that pot. It's only on the side. And yet somehow, even with this pot not touching any of my compost, the holes, it still got something out of the compost and started to grow on its own. Does it have holes? Yes. I don't want you to come back and ask me, there was no holes in the zucchini plant pot? Yes, there were holes, but it was an inch from the bottom, so the holes were not on the bottom. So somehow things that this plant needed still managed to get inside and have this plant take off. Now, I'm not moving this plant. Whatever it's doing, it's happy, and I don't want to make it unhappy. I now have fruit that I didn't even know was there. I thought there were only male flowers. So when you're composting in place, if you're not ready to plant, stick some pots in there, because it does benefit your compost bin, because your compost bin is alive. We're not doing hot compost. We're doing cold compost. And your plants will benefit. And then, had it not gotten so big, I could have simply lifted up this zucchini and planted it somewhere else. But now, of course, it's staying. And right now, the strawberry mint in there that's in its own pot is staying. And I'll figure out what I'm going to do with the chocolate mint later. That's all that's in there. I'm just sharing this with you because I don't know what to say. I didn't prep it. I just took a pot. The pot had holes, not on the bottom, and I simply sat it on top, and this plant almost overnight just took off. So there it is. It's been sitting there for just 2 or 3 weeks. Time does go by quick, but it's about 2 or 3 weeks. It started taking off immediately. No prep, no nothing. And there it is. So I wanted to share that with you. So microbes and earthworms and all that are moving. So even if you don't try to put it in, it'll go in. But that's how alive these compost bins are. By not having them hot compost, this is great. Now, some of you have said you've had problems with rodents or things getting into your compost bins. If you do have a problem and you're not going to cover it, you could go get the cheapest potting soil you want, or garden soil. I wouldn't get potting soil is more money than garden soil. You can get them for a couple dollars a bag at your big box stores. And you could put a layer of soil on top, or native soil. And if you've got wood chips, even better yet. When you dump a bunch of stuff in there, cover it with that. The other thing is, if you don't want to keep covering because you're dumping every day, then go ahead and dig a hole in your compost container, dump your stuff in it, and just push it with your hand and cover it over. That's all you have to do. You just bury it slightly, and that should work. It really should work. Don't worry if you see critters showing up in there, because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're breaking down everything. So that's it. Back to work I go for today. This is nothing planned. This is no planned video. It's just I was out here and I looked in and thought, I'm going to share this with you because this plant baffled me. Have a great day. And wow, don't forget to eat what you grow. Honest to goodness, I had no idea it was there. And look at the ants. See the ants that are going in and out? Look at this. I want you to see this. They're pollinating. So don't worry about a few ants. You don't want them in the house and all that. But as far as this, a few ants are okay. Well, with that again, have a great day. And don't forget to eat what you grow, everybody. Bye-bye.